CMPD, representing the migration side of this partnership with UCLG and UNICEF, to discuss the idea of cities being more active, engaging on the issue of migration. We often faced a situation where we were looked at and wondering, are we in the wrong address? Things have completely changed. And I think cities are embracing the fact that migration realities concern them dramatically, positively, and challenging. We have nowadays a situation where also states are very much evolving in the way they perceive the phenomenon from an exclusively sovereign matter, where states determine the nature of migration as a cross-border phenomenon, people moving from one country to another, from a much more complex one, where basically these realities are multiple and multidimensional, where the movement of people from one country to another is one thing, but where they settle down, either temporarily or permanently, is another. And that must be part of the equation. And here, cities, local authorities, urban areas have a key role to play. At the end of the day, when we discuss with migrant communities and cities, once they are settled somewhere, the door they knock at is usually the local services, local municipal councils, and so on and so forth. It is no longer at the ministry, but the matters are being addressed. So, for me, this is why this Mediterranean Urban Migration Forum is probably the framework within which we will continue to thrive as a community, as a group, as a partnership, all together in a multidimensional governance. And I'm very much looking forward personally to take part in the discussions which will take place today and tomorrow, which will be also extremely important in determining the way forward. It is also very crucial that we address the issue of migration in all its diversity at the local level. This peer learning event on tackling xenophobia and discrimination, puts cities and youth on the move at the forefront, is in this regard extremely important. It is often at the local level that the first-hand impacts of exclusions are felt the most, as well as where the positive impacts of inclusion and sustainable development are most amplified. The importance of local and urban level dynamics are not to be underestimated and neglected. As such, local governments and local level stakeholders are uniquely placed to understand, analyze, and potentially even influence public perceptions about migrants and displaced children and youth. This can be done not only by identifying and addressing the root causes for xenophobia and discrimination, but also by including, listening, and amplifying the voices of migrants and displaced children and youth in a meaningful and substantive manner. The UN 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development highlights that youth, including migrant youth, are not to be seen as mere beneficiaries of actions, but rather to be empowered to become actors themselves for inclusion and sustainable development. This clearly applies to all of the world's 1.2 billion young people who currently make up 16% of the global population, and to the 1.3 billion young people who will call the world home by 2030. As such, a complementary approach to youth inclusion and youth-sensitive participatory approaches to address discrimination and xenophobia includes particular emphasis being dedicated on young professionals working on migration, strengthening their skills and drawing on their experiences and potential is instrumental for the development of sustainable approaches. In this regard, ICMPD has been increasingly focusing on engaging young professionals on migration, including through dedicated training and capacity development actions. The most recent such endeavor was the Young Migration Professionals Training, which took place last month in Malta with young migration professionals from the entire Mediterranean region, In the framework of the European Migration Thrive and in close cooperation with the newly launched Training Institute on Migration Capacity Partnerships for the Mediterranean. I had the pleasure to meet them, and I can tell you it's always a smart move to invest in your future process. Since we are in the Mediterranean region, and we are the Mediterranean Urban Migration Forum, it is essential to mention the new agenda for the Mediterranean, which highlights particular focus on individuals, especially women and youth, and seeks to help them meet their hopes for the future, enjoy their rights, and build a peaceful, secure, more democratic, greener, prosperous, and inclusive southern neighborhood. In this regard, responding to the call of the new agenda for the Mediterranean, ICMPD Mediterranean developed the overarching concept of migration capacity partnerships. Promoting a vision of partnership steered towards the principle of joint leadership, shared responsibility, we move towards a mutual acknowledgement of partners' respective realities, competences, capacities, contextual know-how, needs, priorities, and respective goals for migration governance in their geographical area. If you will, the work that we have done with cities has very much inspired this approach in the sense that their migration realities needed to be brought to the attention of the state-level stakeholders. Instrumental to this migration capacity partnership approach are its key drivers, and we believe that we have reached a point of time in cooperation, international cooperation on migration, where the partnerships need to be articulating beyond the traditional thematic silos, if you will, of asylum and international protection, migration and development, irregular migration and trafficking in human beings, and so on and so forth, and to look into what connects them all when it comes to the necessary capacities needed for every stakeholders, which are professionalization of the sector, which are modernization of the capacities, which is communication about migration, a far too often misunderstood, misinterpreted, and distorted field. And it is also, and very much illustrated by the work we are doing, the multidimensional governance of migration. Focusing particularly here today on the latter, multidimensional migration governance, it is important to note that multidimensional here refers to both the vertical and horizontal aspects, the width and the depth. This means that sufficient emphasis needs to be placed equally on inclusion of different levels of governance, national and local level, but also with regard to including additional non-governmental actors, and that also evidently includes the youth. By bringing forward youth engagement and by facilitating exchanges between city representative stakeholders and youth on the move, initiatives designed to combat xenophobia and marginalization and support social inclusion can truly achieve their desired sustainable approach. In the last few years, I have had the pleasure of taking part in a number of peer learning events organized by the Mediterranean city-to-city migration. This partnership is successful partnership with UCLG and UN Habitat, and where other partners have come on board along the way. The experiences shared by local authorities are most elucidating and inspiring. They show a reality that is not always acknowledged and considered in debates on migration, and one that MC2CM along with partners and donors have been striving for a number of years to bring to the forefront. And I am pleased to see that we are getting there, and consequences and synergies, as well as acceptance of realities, make cities' voices more prominent on the migration governance agenda today than it has ever been. This Mediterranean Urban Migration Forum is a testament of that, and an important milestone. We are reaching and need to strive so that we can achieve migration policies that take into account issues of relevance, such as that under consideration today. To close my remarks, I would like to particularly and most sincerely thank the City of Seville for welcoming this MUM Forum and its generosity, as well as the MC2CM partners just mentioned, UCLG, our colleagues from UN Habitat, FAMSI, our representative for the youth, and of course, not to forget our partners and donors, the European Union, and particularly the DG NIR, and the Swiss Agency for Development and Cooperation. I would like to thank you all and wish us a very successful first Mediterranean Urban Migration Forum. Thank you.
Thank you, Julian. Let me call to the stage Elana Wong from the major group of youth and children and youth, focal point for migration, and member of the youth caucus of UCLG.
Thank you, Amelia, Dr. Ma, UCLG, and the CTCB for inviting me here today, and their continued support of young people's meaningful engagement in the intergovernmental and interdisciplinary decision-making. I'm honored to be here today and have the chance to engage with all of you making impact on the ground. It has become trendy to talk about youth empowerment, but a few spaces actually center and uphold the fundamental component of youth empowerment, which is enabling youth to speak for themselves and recognize their role as innovative leaders and experts in our own right, capable of equal standing at these tables. UCLG has been one of the few to embody this and continue to create these spaces, so we thank you and we hope you all follow their lead. We especially appreciate this action-centered session on xenophobia and discrimination. It's a commonly mentioned topic, but one that feels less tangible, and so much political and media coverage often just laments its existence rather than addressing ways to tackle the issue. It also comes at a timely point, as during COVID-19, xenophobia levels increased as people became afraid of the virus traveling, exacerbated by the media, and certain public figures racializing the disease. I actually experienced this myself when at the height of the pandemic, anti-Asian racism and xenophobia was at an all-time high. And every time I left my house, I would encounter some form of discrimination. People spat at me, a lady chased me down the train carriage, and people would tell me to go back to China. I've only ever been to Shanghai Airport once though. And I was privileged enough to return home to safety and a relatively unhindered life. But thousands of children and youth just kilometers away are not that lucky. Xenophobia and discrimination against children, youth, and their families can have a lasting effect that shapes the young person's self-worth, perception of their identity and cultural heritage, and their sense of safety and belonging in society. Intersectional danger, when compounded, can be incredibly impactful in a negative way. Think of a young migrant girl who may be undocumented and also maybe a racial or religious minority. She'll wake up and she'll go to try and get her vaccine, and she might be denied for lack of documentation. She'll then go to school, an educational program perhaps that she's allowed access to, but she will struggle to transfer these qualifications to higher education and then to a job. She will take the bus home, and she might face some racism. A person on the bus wants to help, but they're too afraid, they can't find the words because they don't have xenophobia programs teaching them how to. So the young migrant girl goes unprotected, and she feels incredibly sad and hurt by this encounter. She then goes home and she tells her parent, who has their labor exploited as their employer uses undocumented migrants as cheap employees without social protection. And they're too scared to report to authorities either. And then her parent tells her, tired of facing the same thing every day, that she will never belong in this place. And then she goes to sleep thinking about how different she is. Can you imagine living a life like that? The Lampedusa Charter and peer learning events like this is a key opportunity to address these issues, and fundamental commitments such as that to stop talking about illegality and focus on inclusion are really key. Cities are a space of potential and empowerment and creativity in implementing solutions and responding quickly to both community sentiment as well as to the values of the city. Particularly when it comes to responding to xenophobia and discrimination, there is a reason that love thy neighbor is such a well-known value across all our cultures, and the local community is the strongest foundation from which to combat these issues. The strength of community is a beautiful thing. Just, I think yesterday or the day before, 100 residents of Peckham, a borough of London, came out to block an immigrant being deported. And this was someone who was about to be thrown into a van accompanied by 10 police officers. Violence is not necessary. And the community came together through Twitter and said, hang on, this is our neighbor, this is our friend, we will not let this happen. And the city of Maringa in Brazil, for instance, they overcome issues of participation through things like creating a youth council with migrant inclusion and a specific migrant councillor that brings migrant voices to local decision making without, overcoming this idea that they can't vote. But they work around it because they're able to listen to the community and think about their needs. Think about sanctuary cities, even local government newsletters. How many people read those? You have so much power to send a message to the residents of the city on who belongs in the community, who can be leaders, who deserves to have a say. And to inclusively and sustainably address discrimination and xenophobia, we must engage youth and children in cities' efforts and programs. There are some examples of youth who have been innovating, and much of it is localized or can be harnessed for localization. I'm thinking of the Welcome app in the Netherlands, who have recently also expanded to Sweden. They use an online app-based platform to bring together young people, local volunteers with newcomers to the city, and also the Association for Integration Women, who work in Modena, Italy, bringing together both young chefs and young migrants and teaching them to cook, and have created a restaurant where even Michelin star reviewers have patronized it. And for all these, cities have been key partners in enabling this inclusion. But for children and youth, even those who haven't had the chance to be social entrepreneurs, they are also experts in the challenges that they face. So we must prioritize their meaningful participation in order to know where these obstacles arise. So some questions to ask yourself today and reflect upon in terms of engaging youth. Who are the children and youth in your community? What intersectional vulnerabilities could they be facing as they navigate their lives? What are the ways in which you enable children and young people, especially migrants and refugees, to participate in these efforts? How can you make it easier or more inclusive for them? And finally, how can we work together across all stakeholders, city jurisdictions, local government sectors, to holistically and inclusively address discrimination and xenophobia? Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Elana. Thanks a lot to the three of you for having kick-started us in such a brilliant and meaningful way. I am sure that our colleagues like me are delighted to hear your words before we really get into this real work. We have a long day ahead, and we are particularly happy that today we are not alone. The people that you always see, the usual faces from the learning team of UCLG, the colleagues at ICMPD supporting, UN Habitat, but we also have our colleagues from the UNICEF that will be describing to us some of the realities that they are dealing with and that are for sure very familiar to you as well. So I will thank you again. You're free from us, from the stage at least. Of course, happy to welcome you anytime. We know you are too busy, the three of you. And let us get started. And if you allow me, we wanted to start with a small warm-up exercise just to cheer you up a little bit, to wake you up. And I will ask my colleagues that have prepared a small survey, a Mentimeter, to share their screen. Wow, that's a level of delivery that is impressive. So thank you so much. My colleagues, Sarah Hofflich, Paloma Labe, and Pablo Mariani will be supporting us in all this exercise, but also for the full day with a lot of activities. And first of all, we will ask you to take your phones and to enter the code that you see on top of the screen. In this case, we have 33, 95, 90, and 29. 33, 95, 90, and 29. And please do it because I will be seeing if there is anyone following my advice. By the way, I don't know if the Wi-Fi code has been shared already, but if you don't have it yet, and for those who need it, I have it here somewhere. I know the password is Forum 2022, and the network is, if someone knows whispering to me, Migration Forum, Migration Forum, and Forum 2022. And I see that it has worked because I now see how many of you are already getting to the Mentimeter survey. This one is important, by the way, because we need to then, at the end of the day, know if you have learned anything or not. So please do 33, 95, 90, 29. Don't be shy, don't be lazy. Please do it, it's lots of fun. Forum 2022. The password of the Wi-Fi is Forum 2022. Forum 2022. Menti.com, yes. Okay, let us wait for a few more seconds. The more we are, the funnier it is, so it's worth it. Okay, and if your experience is any trouble with the website, just raise your hand. We'll help you with that.
But are you already at the survey?
Okay, well, I think we can get started. The code will remain there, so please continue to join. Menti.com, and the code is 33 95 90 29. Okay, colleagues, I would say, yes, there's a QR code. Okay, I see it's working now. All right, okay. Sara Paloma, should we get started? So the first question is, what age groups are the most vulnerable suffering discrimination and xenophobia? Of course, here we speak about children from 0 to 18. What do you think? What is the age group? Like 0 to 6-year-old, 6 to 11-year-old, 11 to 16, 16 to 18. Okay, we see that many of you think that, let's say, young teenagers experience more discrimination and xenophobia, along with youth that are about to enter adulthood. We might speak about this later and see what are the causes of this and what not. So, next question, please. So, which social actors are key in the promotion of local policies against discrimination and xenophobia towards migrant children? And here I will read it for you. Is it local governments, family, sports clubs, schools? I can't read that one. Private companies, religious groups, cultural organizations and initiatives, friends, and social media. Of course, I sort of tend to see a bias there on the local government aspect, but very closely followed by school, cultural organizations, social media, but also family. You can keep answering these even if we go to the next question. What are the priorities related to childhood, youth, and migration in your city or territory? What are your priorities? Guarantee access to basic services, access to education, access to identity papers, to documentation. The very fact of discrimination, stereotypes, lack of opportunities, or access to health. So we see that, again, the first four, I would say, are among the key priorities to you. Access to education and to documentation seems key in all your territories. Let's go to the next one. So here it's more open, so you need to mention in any of the official languages of this peer learning one action put in place by your local government to reduce discrimination and xenophobia towards childhood. Of course, you don't need to describe it very extensively. A couple of words might be enough. The idea is just to get us started a little bit. And we are seeing the first one, speaking about art activities. We see also inclusive school and education, teacher diversity training, inclusive football teams, sports, intercultural initiatives, education, dialogue, information, again cultural activities, and indeed it's easy to see how these initiatives match what you just highlighted as priorities, but also as challenges. We will be happy to hear more from you about what is exactly that you're doing. And finally, what are the expectations that you have for this peer learning event? And here, you need to rank it, being 1 the most important one, and 5 the less important priority. Are you interested rather in sharing your successful initiatives, learning from other initiatives, identify some global trends related to childhood, find support perhaps in some of the challenges and realities you're facing, or build a roadmap with partners or contributing to it? And here again, we see that you're here to learn, so I assume that Sarah Hoffish is very happy at the moment. But also, we do see the sort of policy element of it, building a roadmap with partners and identifying global trends. So we will leave it here. I thank you. I know, oh, we do have one more, the bonus track one. So what is a childhood-friendly city? That's it. Nothing else to explain. Here, just again, in a very short way, what is childhood, and what is a childhood-friendly city? And here we see, of course, we couldn't say bye to Menti without a word cloud. And we see an inclusive city, a safe city, one that includes everyone, entertaining, participatory, one that respects human rights, an entertaining one, a city of opportunities for all, I can see, but the inclusion and safety aspect of it, along with education and participation, seem to be the key ones here. So let us give it a couple of seconds more, but it seems quite clear here. And now, yes, let us get started with the real peer learning. And for that, well, thank you so much, and applause to yourself. And then I will give the floor now to our colleagues from UNICEF. I am happy to introduce you to Salud. He is the person that is responsible for childhood at UNICEF in Andalusia, and she will drive us to some of the key topics that we will be discussing today. And yes, Salud is asking for a presentation. It will come, Salud, perhaps you can get you want it? Yeah. So, okay. Welcome, Salud.
Okay, so thank you very much, Fatima, and thank you all. Good morning. My name is Salud Marmol. I'm working at the Spanish Committee of UNICEF. I'm based here in Seville, I'm working as a child rights officer, working on trying to work on migration and child-friendly cities, protection, budgetary items, so on. Thank you very much for the opportunity to join this very important discussion to learn from and discuss with city representatives and youth about how we can jointly combat xenophobia and discrimination against children on the move and their families at the local level and the role that youth are playing into this. First of all, in this short session I'm facilitating, I will look at why it's so important for us to come together today and exchange promising practices and brainstorming about addressing barriers and gaps we are facing in. Understand how xenophobia and discrimination manifest in everyday life for our children on the move and their families, and what the impacts are, including on host communities. Discuss the role of local governments, which are a priority for UNICEF. As you know, we are working on the child-friendly cities here as well in Spain. We have in Andalusia already like 85 child-friendly cities. Why are cities and local governments uniquely placed to combat xenophobia and discrimination? And at last, but not the least, understand how we can support youth, including youth on the move and host community youth, very important thing. We are talking about youth on the move, but as well youth at the host community, in their efforts to address discrimination and create inclusive communities which offer services and protections for all. Well, it has been very much entertaining than my exercise, what Fatima has been doing just a few minutes before. But I would like anyway to check the temperature, to check the temperature here in Seville with 45 degrees at the outside. It's a bit curious, but I think you understand. To see how we are going as a group in this room, I would like you to raise your hand if the statement is true in the context that you are working in, as I am reading. For example, there is a common understanding of what we mean by xenophobia and discrimination. Raise your hand if you agree with this sentence. Oh my God. 1, 2? 1, 2 maybe? Jesus Christ. There's a lot of work on me. This is not good or this is not bad. That's the way we are working in. And I'm not saying that it's a bad idea or it's a bad thing, a bad fact that only 2 people are okay with this sentence. But that it's a, let's say, a curious picture to see that from you can be like, I don't know, Fatima, 100 people, maybe, persons here? 100 or maybe more, and just 2 raise the hand. It's something to think about it. Xenophobia and discrimination have been identified as a barrier impacting access to services and protection for children on the move and their families. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, maybe 20. Okay. There is a good understanding of the root causes, what is driving exclusion and discrimination. A good and a common understanding of the root causes. Maybe here we are like at the beginning, just 1, 2, maybe. Initiatives are in place to make services more inclusive for all children and their families, regardless of migration status. Just 1, my friend? Maybe 2? Only 2? You are looking at each other, you are looking at there's a few answers, I mean, in every sentence, in each paragraph. Youth, including migrant and displaced youth and host community youth, are key partners when it comes to make public services accessible, monitoring and addressing xenophobia and discrimination. Yeah? Yeah? Youth as a key partner? Yeah? Yeah? Sure? Yeah? Okay, let's go for it. I mean, this exercise is simply to get an understanding of whether cities are already working to address xenophobia, whether this is based on a solid understanding of the root causes and drivers, and whether this work involves youth. Well, I don't think it's necessary to go through these definitions of xenophobia and discrimination, as we should work on it. I mean, I have already seen that there is not a common understanding of these key concepts. Well, okay, what we are talking about, what's at stake? Xenophobia and discrimination were prevalent in many contexts before the COVID-19 pandemic, but the pandemic brought this issue to the fore and underlined the urgency to act as hate speech, stigma, discrimination, and xenophobia increased. For example, more than 39% of UNICEF country offices reported increased tensions towards populations on the move in a socioeconomic survey conducted in September 2020. The renewed focus on the topic of xenophobia and discrimination has also generated commitments from governments at different levels to create more inclusive societies and develop plans for the long-term integration of children on the move and their families, recognizing that inclusion creates a win-win situation where migrants, communities, and economies can benefit from accelerated social and economic development. The International Migration Forum in May 22 this year, for example, constituted a testament to the importance attributed to inclusion and social cohesion, as well as a recognition of the role youth have been playing in this regard, as many government representatives highlighted the need to combat xenophobia and discrimination and leverage the role of cities and local governments play to make services inclusive for all. Discrimination and xenophobia threaten efforts to protect children's rights, provide inclusive services for all, promote peaceful societies, build resilience and deliver on the Sustainable Development Agenda, leaving no one behind. What's at stake then? We are talking about human rights violations, where human rights are not promoted or protected by governments. Xenophobia and discrimination might not be prosecuted or addressed. This can fuel a deep mistrust, for the translators, among migrant and displaced communities who may actively avoid seeking services. We are talking about risk of violence as well. Xenophobia or discrimination in host communities may trigger further displacement, in turn increasing exposure and vulnerability to risk, abuse, and exploitation. We are talking about impact on social cohesion, something so important, a key concept for our democracy. Xenophobia can negatively impact integration and inclusion of migrant and displaced people in their host communities, reduce incentives to build a new life in host countries, and make communities more fragmented and unstable. And as I said before, inclusion is a win-win. I would like to share an example here. Recently in Spain, we have a reform of the immigration regulation at national level that allow young migrants legal access to employment since 16 years old. I mean, it was possible before to start to work, to have an employment since you are 16, but there were lots of legal barriers, and organizations working with you were defending a change of these legal processes. Now with this reform, just in 4 months, young migrants employed have duplicated, which is seen as a successful way for the organizations who are working with them. Where do xenophobia and discrimination manifest? Where discriminatory law and policies impact access to services and protection. Where prejudices of peers drive negative attitudes towards migrants and displaced persons among community members. Where service providers confront children on the move and their families with discriminatory attitudes, also in the service providers. Where media outlets negatively influence the public discourse around migration and displacement. For instance, now here in the south part of Spain, in Andalusia, we are in election time. During election time, governments or the media may push anti-migrant narratives and frame migration in the context of national security to appeal to parts of the electorate. Unfortunately, I can tell you that we have here some political parties that are doing so. Talking about media, framing the public discourse can include, for example, frequent reporting on migration in relation to crime and national security debates. Migrants and displaced persons encounter discrimination and xenophobia in host communities, but also encounter discrimination in return contests. Return girls, for example, may face stigma and assumptions about their suitability for marriage within their community. Return may also be seen as failure and generate resentment among communities if the reintegration assistance received by the returnees, not provided to the local population, is perceived as an undue reward. This has an impact on child development and well-being. I would like to, Pablo, sorry for the translators, a bit of Spanish now. Pablo, do we have internet access? Yeah? Could you click on this word that you see there, please? Perdona, en español, Pablo, perdona. ¿Nos vamos a la pantalla en la que estábamos? Sí, sí. A la diapositiva en la que estábamos. ¿Ves ahí que falta una palabra? Pincha aquí, por favor. I'm going to show you a video. ¿No va? Ok. ¿Sí? ¿Lo tenemos? Gracias, Pablo. Podemos volver a la presentación. Ok. Gracias, Pablo. I think I have to rush now because Fatima advised me, but I want you to see this video because for me it's like very touching and it reminds us why we are here, okay? A child is a child, no matter what. Okay, address one of the important questions to discuss today. What can local governments do to address xenophobia and discrimination? Local governments experience firsthand the impacts of xenophobia and discrimination in their cities and municipalities, but they also recognize the potential and huge contributions young migrants and displaced people can make to communities and cities. Through incubating solutions and generating evidence on what works for children, families, and cities, local and regional governments are harnessing the benefits of migration at the local level. They are best placed to create spaces, both physical and virtual, where long-term residents and newcomers can meet. In the next slides, I will go as quickly as I can, Fatima. In the next slide, I will dive into these entry points and share promising practices, only one because I don't have very much time. Understanding root causes and monitoring xenophobia and discrimination. Efforts to address xenophobia and discrimination need to start with an understanding of the status quo. What are the root causes and what is driving fear among host community members? What are barriers to accessing basic services, both for host communities and children on the move and their families? Here, the myth works is the Xenophobia Barometer in Colombia, which is a platform started by youth to analyze narratives around Venezuelan migrants and identify what is driving public opinion about migration. Facilitating meaningful engagement between host communities and children on the move and their families. For engagement between host communities and migrant and displaced families, inclusive development planning is key, so that there is no spatial isolation of children on the move and their families. This includes ensuring local development planning, avoids social exclusion of children on the move and their families, and instead ensures they are mainstreamed within existing development plans and have access to affordable housing services, transportation, public spaces, and connectivity, so they can be part of the daily routine with the rest of the neighbors and developing a shared sense of citizenship. Here I want to share, it's just 1 minute, a promising practice from Greece, a work of the National Theatre of Greece together with UNICEF about arts. Pablo, por favor. Gracias, Pablo. Volvemos a la presentación. Another key scope I would like to share, supporting access to learning and earning opportunities for youth on the move alongside host community youth. After this, if we have time, I will share with you a promising practice in Italy from the Upshift project in UNICEF, but now we have to rush. And finally, one of the key questions from a point of view, creating opportunities for youth to participate in community development and political process, including migrant and displaced youth in civic engagement activities and political processes can also enhance their communication, their problem solving and negotiation skills. And just to finish, I would like to mention that you are going to see later on today, you have a separate station on the Charter, but we would like to address the Lampedusa Charter, which is a step further in a long path of local efforts and global advocacy to overcome border-centered approaches and shape a notion of citizenship for all communities. I wish you a very successful day. You will find UNICEF working with you in all this, in all countries. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Salud, and apologies for the rush. I'm sure we will have the time to discuss some of the pending elements. And now I am really delighted to introduce to you our Director of Learning. Most of you already know her, Sarah Hoflich. It is Sarah Hoflich who will be at the driver's seat in this peer learning that I'm sure we will all enjoy. Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you, Fatima. I doubt this on the driver's seat because we have so many very experienced drivers around us. In particular, I see so many faces I've known during the project. The MC2MC project, as Julian mentioned in the morning, is very, very significant to us. So with Lamin, even Lina, we have many of our own colleagues here helping out to make this evidence and the knowledge of the ground meaningful to the global agenda. And so I will now lead you through the next piece of activities, which is a peer review. So peer review, we will show you what a peer review is, a video of 2 minutes. And then in the meantime, I will already ask my 2 speakers to come here to accompany me in the front, Lea and Dayut from Casablanca and from Avinta. Pablo, the video, peer review. Okay, this was the instruction for you. Have you all understood what you will be doing in the next half hour? What will you be doing? I will ask you. So you will be consultants. You will be consultants to Lea and to Fahima, who will present their cases, what they are doing, and then they will present a key question or a problem they face in their daily work, and you will consult to think about it and give them the feedback. So, Lea, I think you will be the first starting to show your case. We release our executive bureau. Thank you, Mayor. So please come here. Your presentation is uploaded, I think. And as you have seen in the video, if you go over 10 minutes, you fail, including the question. So, floor is yours. No, the question, she will do one question, and later we will divide you into groups. One group will be working on the question of Lea, and the other of Anvita, and the other one on Casablanca. So you just leave your questions, and later, when the groups have been working, then we will discuss, okay? Okay. Floor is yours.
Je vais parler en français si ça vous va. Donc je suis Léa Hénon-Baron. Je travaille pour l'Anvita, l'Association nationale des villes et territoires accueillants, un réseau de villes, départements, régions d'autorités locales françaises. Et donc, je suis ravie d'être avec vous aujourd'hui, merci. Donc, j'ai essayé de faire une présentation d'action envers la lutte contre les discriminations en lien avec la jeunesse, autant au niveau d'Anvita, c'est-à-dire au niveau national en France, qu'au niveau local, avec des exemples de villes membres ou d'autorités locales membres du réseau. Voilà. Can we pass? Si se puede pasar la diapositiva. Ah, ¿lo tengo? Ah, ok, parfait.
We work in activism, especially with politicians, and our main challenges are to change the narrative about migrations, to talk about it in a more inclusive way, to be more inclusive with migrants themselves, focusing on access to rights and access to education that should be a basic right. Also an access to public services. In order to achieve this, we as entities should know the competences or local governments have to ensure the access to our migrants. We have created a scheme to distribute the competences to ensure the access to migrants, to youth migrants, to different resources. We have created an approach that can be applied to different territorial organisms, focusing on access to primary education for children between 6 and 10 years old in order to ensure they can study. We are collaborating with different associations, and we want them to work on these difficulties to access to education. we are working with an organization whose name is A School for Everyone, École pour tous, in French. This is our outcome. On the right corner, on the left corner, you can see this mapping, taking into account the housing, health, sport, and also the access to these services for youth migrants. You can see on the right side of the slide the pathway of a migrant, the way he has to follow in order to be able to enjoy its rights. In our approach, we have used people from civil society, youth that work in public services, especially in an Erasmus program from different countries. Also Spain. Seville itself was a host city, and with this work we have been able to define what is a host city and what does a host city have to do in order to accept these children. These are some examples of our member cities. Bilabán organized a festival per year. The organizer of the festival was organized by migrant young people. They decided what to do, also the logistics, and they do this in order to tackle discrimination. This is an example of the participation of young migrants. Also in France, in another part of France, in Tours, we work with students in high schools together who did different works to fight against discrimination. Another example is UNICEF, who has in France an initiative whose name is Child-Friendly City, and who fight for here they listen to the voices of migrant people. Projects on the go as successful, and it's been the pleasure for us the need of our young people. Also, we want communities that cannot access or to join.
share with youth. Within our national context, in order to put the national strategy for migrants in place, for migrants, migrants who are not in a regular situation, we established this framework, this legal framework in Morocco. Of permanent children holders. Finally, work process of these among the different civil society and among politicians, creating participation, reinforcing bonds, and increasing confidence, the confidence of these young migrants.
Okay. Ok, merci pour votre attention.
Thank you very much for your attention.
The consultants you have here to think about. Yeah, maybe now. We can later fine-tune it. One.
Donc, la question qui se pose, c'est les défis et les challenges, les défis et les problèmes qui se posent au niveau de...
Which are the challenges, the problems that children face in a host country such as Morocco?
So do you get my... Ah, one there. Yeah, here coming. So, Leah, please. Yeah, here. It is about just reflecting on the tables in several languages. There's not... thank you. Salud, where do you want to give feedback? Okay, so let's look for Leah. And for Hatima, who would like to give feedback on her question? Yeah, here we have two. We hope that you all will organize in groups of feedback. This is important, and we will have facilitators that will help you that this process is productive. Yeah, because we are here in a learning environment and we create the answers and the questions together. So before we go then into this division, I would like very shortly to introduce you a colleague from the OECD EIP, which is an effective institution partnership. This is a very important angle, and they have selected us, in particular the MC2CM project, to do a study about the effectiveness of peer learning. Catherine, would you like to say some words?
Bonjour, good morning, buenos días. My name is Catherine. I'm the OECD lead
work in a part of the OECD that supports development cooperation. So we work with all of our member states to help them improve their practices of providing development cooperation. And in particular, I am responsible for the Effective Institutions platform, which is a platform of OECD and non-OECD countries, where we look at more effective ways of partnership. How can we work better together to have more effective development results? And peer learning is one of the techniques that we're looking at to improve the quality of partnerships, because we see that peer learning has many important attributes, like building trust and mutuality, enabling local capabilities, unleashing local capabilities. So we're partnering with MC2M because you do a lot of peer-to-peer learning, and we're very interested to see what are the methods of peer learning that you use, how do you share knowledge, how do you work together and collaborate, and what impact does it have in terms of changing individual, institutional or organisational behaviours. And if we're doing peer learning activities, how can we track those activities to really ensure that they are having the impact, that they are changing mindsets, that they're changing organisational behaviours that we would like to see. And with the experience with MC2M, we will share that experience with our OECD member states and our partners so that they can think about how they can improve their own methods of working and learning and sharing knowledge. So thank you very much for having me here. I'm really excited to be here and I look forward to the discussion.
Thank you, Catherine, and we are also very excited to have you with us because, of course, what we are doing is not only important in terms of knowledge, advocacy, policy, but also in terms of methodology. So I come now back to our group division. So as there was so little number of hands, I will hope, what is your name, so you can lead the group?
Shiraz Garcia de ONU Habitat, Tunis.
Okay, Shiraz. So please stand up and we make a dot around you of a group which you will have to reflect on the question of Leah. Pablo, can you project the questions, the two questions? And we had another person, yeah. You were wanting to lead the group of, the answer to the question of Hatima.
Halima. Yes. Do you want me to ask the question or what?
You can ask the question again.
Yes.
And you will also stand up.
Yes.
And say your name.
My name is, hello everybody. Okay, my English is very broken, that's why I have to continue in French. Okay. Bon, mon nom c'est Ali Serhani, je représente le secteur privé marocain. Je suis dirigeant d'entreprise dans le recrutement et la chasse de tête. Je suis également le point focal concernant l'Organisation internationale des employeurs concernant l'Afrique, pour ce qui est des affaires de migration. Donc je sais de quoi il s'agit quand on parle de migration parce que j'ai représenté depuis quelques années cette histoire de migration et les points de vue du secteur privé. Je ne cesse de le dire, pour nous le secteur privé, le problème ne se pose pas quand on parle de migration, parce que pour nous, la seule nationalité qui vaille, c'est la compétence. On s'en fout s'il est marocain, ou s'il est australien, ou s'il est bengali, ou s'il est indien, ou s'il est martien ou qui provient de Jupiter. S'il a les compétences qu'il a, nous l'embauchons, parce que nous sommes le secteur privé. Et bien sûr, nous avons des responsabilités. I will finish. Yes. You want me to ask Halima or not?
No, I think the relation you highlight is very clear and very interesting for the group to work on, no? The relation with private sector and administration. If Halima is okay, that you will work around this relation with the group work, then I think you lead the group number 2. Yeah, okay. But we will also have a group number 3 because we have another practice still to go. So please, all of you, you are aware that you will have 3 choices. And now we have the third practice.
Yeah, let us welcome our colleague from Gaziantep. So we ask you to go to the stage and introduce yourself. It's gonna take a moment just to get the projected PPT, but we'll get there. Back to you.
Okay. Can you introduce yourself? Sure. And then start? You have 10 minutes.
Good morning. It's a pleasure to be here. So I will have a short presentation about Gaziantep, and we just selected the activity, a project. Yeah. Is it 13 round now? Yeah, it's a community center that we established recently after the Syrian crisis in 2016. So I will briefly talk about it. So I will go through with the questions that shared with us. The first one, main challenge to address what we aim. We are trying to build a resilient city for all in a time of crisis. And we strive to establish social spaces to bring people together, to promote social cohesion, and to build a sense of coexistence among refugee community and host community members. And if I talk about the city profile of Gaziantep, there is 500,000 refugees, and it's 22% of the whole population in the city. And 2 in the third of them are under 18, so they are children. So as Gaziantep municipality, as the city of Gaziantep, we work for and with every single person who is living in the city, regardless of their origins or status, and we strive for providing equal opportunities and fair distribution. Also, Gaziantep is recognized as one of the child-friendly cities in Turkey, so we feel that we have a high responsibility. And if I'm talking about the objective, it's a local authority, but we today believe that you can't separate local authorities from global objectives because we are living in a global world. So what's happening in the global world, of course, impacting locals, and what's happening in the local, of course, impacting global level. So locally, our objectives: youth participation, promotion of communication and interaction, creation of peaceful environment in the city, improving psychosocial well-being of vulnerable groups, and empower young women and boys. And of course, global objectives come from Global Compact for Migration, and you can see that we are also trying to reach that objective globally. And what has been done so far with our community center? Actually, we have 3 main units. The first one, non-formal education unit, that try to support children who are in the formal education system, because language barrier is such an important issue in Turkey. Turkish and Arabic languages, they are totally different. So sometimes children, they need extra support because of the language barrier. That's why we provide non-formal education, including early child education here. And we have a variety of socio-cultural activities at the center. And we have a social service unit because, unfortunately, most of the people who are visiting the center, either Syrian or Turkish, they have vulnerabilities. So that social service unit is quite important for us. And as community center, right now, we have a capacity of providing services for 500 people per day. And as Gaziantep Metropolitan Municipality, we are leading the project with very close partnership with IOM, UN Migration. And of course, we are working together with local, national, and international NGOs, including UN agencies. And most importantly, we are working with people of Gaziantep. And for whom we are working, everybody living in the city, with a special focus on youth and children and vulnerable groups. These are our target groups. And our main methods are leaving nobody behind, do no harm on our services, conflict-sensitive planning, fighting against discrimination, and right to city, and trying to create a city for all. Our outcome, since starting January 2016 to May 2022, in total we reached over 80,000 individuals with our community center, and it's still ongoing, and now it's a community initiative because we are now kind of working with community members. They are supporting us, they are leading the project. And our future plans are keep walking, learning and improving services day to day, building sense of belonging in the community. What we learned and our challenges, basically starting from the very beginning, human resources and financial instruments, they were the main core challenges that we faced. And how we tackle them, or trying to tackle them, community initiative volunteer program, and we have a lot of volunteers. They are either migration background or local people, host community members. And also we are mobilizing international resources, mostly by UN. And key lessons of that process is a actually general lesson for us throughout the whole services of the municipality. First of all, we don't have any alternative to seek universal and equal access to basic services and basic human rights for migrants and refugees without discrimination of any kind. And of course, refugees can be a resource rather than a burden, and they are making crucial contributions to the economic and social fabric of our cities. And of course, every city, they have unique circumstances and they have their own dynamics. Yet the fundamentals of addressing migration through a lens of inclusion and a respect for human rights has been core to successful management of migration at local level. And how can this work inspire? Of course, municipalities, local authorities, they have an important role to play, not only providing social services, but also building a resilient city. And of course, the impact of community center, where it's located, if we compare to other neighborhoods, the contribution to the community is visible. So it's a great tool to mobilize local potential of refugees or migrants. And there are some photos from our activities at the center. And the lovely woman in the middle is our mayor, by the way. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ernst, and please stay for a half a minute more. You also did a very good presentation, very much in time, but now we also need you to address a question so that as in the same you find some consultants to reflect on one of your challenge. So hopefully also as practical and straight away is the question is better.
Okay. To be honest, I haven't thought about the question before, but while I'm presenting or listening to other questions, I think we are, as I said, we are living in a world is smaller right now. What's happening in Gaziantep, of course, can be an example in Morocco or in Ukraine right now. So my question would be how we can work together, or how different cities that they are dealing on different issues may support each other. What kind of tools we need, what kind of platform we need that we can support or we can learn from each other. Of course, this is a great tool, this is a great example, but how we can expand this kind of work might be my question.
an excellent question, and I'm sure you will find good consultants. Maybe we already have some consultants that volunteer the group 3. Oh, you are from Meva region, I'm not sure. We also have here the city of Rabat, so I think you will do this together. Oh, from Tunis. So sorry. So can you introduce yourself so that also the others in the room know who you are, and you will reflect about the question or the proposal, no? To do a proposal to Gaziantep.
D'accord. Bonjour tout le monde. Je m'appelle Hatem Ben Qadim, directeur de cabinet de la ville de Tunis. Bonjour tout le monde. Je m'appelle Hatem Ben Qadim, directeur de cabinet de la ville de Tunis.
To find the right solution for the questions, I'd like to have a few time so he can
to this question, because this is now our proposal. Please, we have 3 groups. One is led by Ali, private sector and local government working together. One is led application of practice of Gaziantep, and the other one is led by Shiraz. So please don't leave them alone. We hope that, I don't know if I should ask you all, but I think my colleague Lina will do this.
Okay, so the thing is, you guys are a little shy and not moving much. So we have the 3 questions that resulted from the 3 presentations on screen right now. We have 3 people that are in charge of the 3 groups that are going to do the peer review discussions. And I will ask you to stand up. Everyone. Shake a little bit. It's been a long morning. If everyone stand up, I mean it. So, okay, based on these 3 questions that we have here, I would ask you to find, maybe you guys come to the front, so the 3 representatives for the three. See. So we have 3 people here. What I will ask you is to come to the front, choose one of the questions, which means you're going to choose one of these people that are in charge of the 3 questions or cases. And then we'll have 3 groups that are going to discuss this question, and then we'll break for a coffee break, and then we'll come back and start working on how can we provide support and some thoughts on these questions for these cases, okay?
No, yeah. Ali, you find 10 people and go with them to coffee break. So the first 10 to go with Ali to the coffee break. It's easy. Please.
Qui est mon groupe? Qui est mon groupe? Number one. Come with me. Ici, c'est le groupe numéro 1. M'exprimer en français. Je vais m'exprimer en français si vous permettez.
Okay, we have almost everybody is in the group. You choose a group, please. You all stand up, go to a group, and then you can go for coffee. So please, you want to join a group? Okay. So, okay, I see every group looks so good. Shiraz is a good group, yeah? So now you go to downstairs, you have a coffee, hopefully with your group, and then in 15 minutes, you are back here. And hopefully with your group, you can finalize the work and take the points, but you need to be back here. Is it okay? 15 minutes? Thank you so much, and make new friends. Translators, we would need one translator for this group. French and Spanish? No, only Spanish. So this means you stay here. Is it possible? The group stay?